Mhm. Perfect.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Microsoft Data and AI South Florida. We are here today with Javier Villegas, who will be talking about Azure SQL DB Managed Instance. And before we start, I would like to just remind everyone that remind everyone that I have sent the email talking about the pass that this year will be a virtual event. So keep an eye out, check your email. You're going to have discounts as being a part of the user group. Please look it up. Great opportunity for great learning there for you. All right. So let's take a look here. And we have Javier here with us. Hi, Javier. So Javier is
Hello.
an international speaker. He is from Argentina, great expert in the area of SQL servers, Azure SQL DB, many other technologies there. He's So without further ado, let me get Javier here to start his presentation here. Thank you very much, Javier, for having and being here with us, sharing the knowledge and contributing to the community.
Thank you, Adriano, again for the invitation to participate in this event that you and your community are organizing. So thank you so much. Again, this is going to be the second one. 2 weeks ago, we spoke about an introduction of Azure data platform, and today we will try to go a little bit deeper in one of the services that I like the most, and that is Azure SQL Database Managed Instance. So let's start with the presentation. Let me share my screen then, and we start. So let me know when you see the screen. Screen number 2, 5. Okay, very good. So this is what I call this service, the evolution of SQL Server as a service, right? As a managed service. So during the session and the conversation, we will cover all this. We will cover what it is, for what is intended to, and then we will go through different sample scenarios and migration path from our existing SQL on-prem environment to managed systems. So we will try to cover it as much as possible. So let's start. For the ones who don't know me, my name is Javier Villegas. I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I'm DBA manager in Mediterranean Shipping Company for the last 14 years. Um, um, my specialty is more related to performance tuning, high availability, and administration overall. Nowadays, I'm more involved doing any kind of data platform activities because now it's not you are not a DBA per se anymore. You have to let's say have certain evolution in your role, right? Just we will try to cover some of the things during the presentation. So I'm involved with any flavor of SQL Server since the very first version, 6.0, C5, and now up to SQL Server 2019, and every single flavor in Azure. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the data platform category since 2016, and I like to be part of communities activities like this one. So I like to in my free time I'm a technical speaker involved with multiple communities around the world, especially all the ones related to PaaS. And I'm part of the local group here in Argentina called SQL Argentina. And as an FYI for all of you, I will be talking in SQL Saturday, Los Angeles this weekend. I will be doing a presentation related to SQL Server monitoring using community tools. Right? So this is just FYI. All there we have my contact information, right? My blog, my LinkedIn and Twitter, and my email address. So if you want to reach me to discuss something about this particular presentation, you just reach me and we try to stay in contact. So let's start. This is a little bit about the agenda. We will try to go through all these points, defining the differences between a PaaS solution and an infrastructure as a service solution. Also, we will cover managed instance, and we also mention Azure SQL Database, which is like another flavor of SQL in Azure. Then we will cover all the migration paths and the latest and greatest updates related to the service. This is something that, like in SQL Server, is not a static service. This is evolving and based on community and professional feedback, right? Microsoft is adding additional functionality to this particular service. So let's see how we're gonna do this managed instance. So let's say we get into the situation in where we have to move our workload, all right, that today we are running on-premise to the cloud, because different scenarios you can have, right? Let's say that you want to decrease your cost and increase your productivity, right? Handling data centers contracts, let's say cost and all the warranties and the hardware and the vendors is something difficult to handle, and it's every day that happens is quite complex, right? And the hosting solutions that are in the market require certain level of maintenance, and they are quite costly, right? So let's say that we reach the point. Sorry, Adriano, there is a lot of noise. I don't know from where it's coming from. I don't know if it's me or yeah. So so this is the first situation that we have. We decide to modernize and evolve because we need to focus on the business, right? So we don't need to. We don't want to, let's say, spend time on all the things that I just mentioned. And we are in the point of our business in where we have the necessity to accelerate our growth, right? So we took the decision. We should go to the cloud. And when we mean cloud in this particular discussion, we're going to be talking about Azure, right? So we took the first decision. We will get rid of the hardware, and we will give it a try to Azure. So, okay, we get into the first problem. We already solved it. We already decide to move to Azure, and now we have to make our second decision, let's say. But this one is everything in Azure already. So let's say that for certain reason, we need to still have control on the hardware, on the operating system, on the networking, Active Directory, clustering, patching, etc., 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 right? In that case, the solution to choose is Infrastructure as a Service, IaaS, right? Because this is basically a virtual machine running in Azure in where you can choose any kind of combination of OS and SQL Server version and edition, including the ones running in Linux, right? And then easily you can move your existing infrastructure to the same, let's say, versions that you are used to run your stuff on-prem, right? That is quite easy. The migration path is simple. So it's the first step that you have in the cloud, right? But again, you need to take care of everything, right? If there is a service pack, if there for the operating system, if there is a cumulative update for SQL Server, if there is something that you need to deal with the authentication, setting up the Active Directory, you have to take care. If you want to have high availability and disaster recovery, you have to consider, deploying another virtual machine in another Azure region, setting up clustering and availability groups, and do everything by yourself. I would say that if we think about what we said at the beginning, that at this point we would like to evolve and focus on our business growth, right? If we spend time and resources on infrastructure topics, well, we are not gaining much, right? But then there is an option. If we don't need to worry about all the things that I just mentioned, right? There is another option, which is platform as a service, right? Which definitely gives you a better cost of ownership, right? And will allow you to really focus not on the technical matter of the SQL Server, right? But on your business and on the growth. At some point, it's like setting up your databases in an autopilot mode. It's not exactly like that, but in some cases and in some particular situation, it is, right? Okay, so we are in Azure and we have to take this decision, right? Let's go to PaaS or let's go to IaaS. If we consider that we would like to move quickly to Azure, well, definitely we spin up this VM, we put our SQL servers in there, and everything is going to be quite similar to what we are used to, right? But the point is, right after that, we have to consider one of the PaaS solutions, again, to accomplish the objectives that we described earlier. So, in one side, we have SQL Server running on VMs, right? We do the management, we do everything, and there are certain levels of SLAs, right? Depending on how we configure the VM, how we set up the HA and DR, et cetera, et cetera. At the other side, as a platform as a service option, we have Azure SQL Database, right? This is, a quite mature service. It's in the market for around 5 years or so. that gives you a flavor of SQL Server as a managed service, right? When I say managed service, it's basically an endpoint of SQL Server in the cloud, right? That you don't have to worry about all the infrastructure points that we discussed earlier. Patching, networking, high availability, backups, disaster recovery. This is part of the service. We're going to go through the details later, right? But this is Azure SQL Database. This is not exactly the same SQL Server that you are running on-prem today, right? This Azure SQL Database, it's a little bit different. It has different point of contact with regular SQL Server. The T-SQL code is quite similar, right? There are certain variations, not many, but certain. But the most important difference, which is, in some cases you can consider it as a problem, but if you start thinking on a little bit better, well, maybe, it's not that bad for certain scenarios. These are what Microsoft call singleton, right? Singleton is a single database which has no interaction with other objects outside the database. That means if you have one database, all the contents or your activity tables, procedures, etc., are going to be within that user database. So let's say that you have one application that you are running on-prem, which has 5 user databases, right? And you have procedures in those databases that are joining tables between the different user databases. Well, you cannot move them to Azure SQL Database like they are at that point, and you have to do a refactoring, right? Because again, all is in the context of a single user database. There are no interaction with the outside in terms of SQL, right, and SQL objects. So again, there are still possibilities and choices to move your on-prem application, right, to Azure SQL Database. But you have to do certain refactoring, right? For example, all those tables that are on different user databases, you have to merge them all together and put them on a single database. But again, that's involved rewriting your code. You may say, hey, this is not good, but consider that, if you think deeper, right, there are certain cases, especially if you are starting a brand new development that requires a relational database as a background, right? Because it's not just the cons that you cannot go outside your user database, right? There are a ton of benefits, right? Again, it's a managed service. You don't have to worry about backup, HA, DR, auto tuning, right? There are certain cases you can get deep inside of the activity, and also one of the good thing of this service is that you can scale up and down on the fly, depending on the activity that you have on that particular moment, right? If your database is kind of idle, right? Let's say because it's the middle of the night and you don't have much activity overnight, well, automatically it can decrease the processors, the memory, and you can even consider like putting in a sort of pause state, right? That will give you the benefit of don't spend money, right? Because all these services you have to pay for the service, right? But if the service is not running, you just need to pay for the storage, and you save some money for that. So you can definitely scale, you can definitely distribute it all around the world in the different Azure areas. So, it's a really great service for certain, situations, right? Again, my recommendation is that if you need to start working on a new development, well, definitely consider Azure Database as the first option. Okay, so we are not here to talk about Azure SQL Database. Right? We're here to talk about something else. Basically, like a while, let's say 2 years ago, Microsoft had come up with this situation, say, hey, there is this black spot or white space between on-prem VMs and Azure SQL Database. There is something in between that we need to provide, right, as a service to be able to have a managed service, a managed SQL service, right? But the migration process shouldn't be that complex. And with that, Microsoft came up with Azure SQL Database Managed Instance, right? This is an almost 100% SQL compatible with any on-prem SQL Server that we have on the market, right? So the marketing phrases or the marketing, things that Microsoft was publishing is that it's just to do a lift and shift of your existing on-prem environment to a managed service, right? With that, if you have a legacy application that, as I said earlier, requires more than one database, and those user databases have procedure or processes that require tables from multiple databases at the same time, right? With managed instance, you can, just do a simple backup and restore, right? And quickly you have all your workload on a managed service. Remember, when I mention managed service, are the servicing where you don't have to worry about setting up authentication, networking, high availability, backups, disaster recovery, etc., etc., etc. So we're going to go through to this phrase that I said at the beginning, almost 100% compatible with SQL Server on-prem. Right? We're going to go through that in a minute. So at this point, right, we have these three different services in Azure, right? Today, Microsoft called this Azure SQL, right? And it's the family, and the members are the VMs, Azure SQL databases, right? As a single database, or as they call elastic pool. Those elastic pools are the one in where you can easily assign resources depending on the load, right? For example, if you are in a high season, if you are an e-commerce website, and you are close to, let's say, Thanksgiving or Christmas, and you know that you're going to have, a peak of activity, you can definitely grant or assign more resources, right, processing power to the Azure SQL database, right? And then we have what we just mentioned, managed instance, right? Managed instance, we will see that is quite similar to what we are used to with SQL Server on-prem, but as a managed service. So, what are other, what are other things that we can mention about managed instance? First of all, as we say, close to 100% compatible with SQL Server on-prem, right? Initially, it was designed to be a private service. What does it mean? And as a big difference of Azure SQL Database, right, the other service, you can definitely publish public endpoint to Azure. That means through internet, you can connect to a port 1433, right, and connect your management studio to an Azure SQL database, right? Again, through internet. Managed instance, instead, as it was defined at the beginning, you had no access to the internet. Everything was private. So you can use managed instance within Azure, right? Or with a private connection from your company, from your infrastructure, right? So you had to set up, for example, those express route or VPN connection to join or link your existing network with Azure. And this way, it's like you extending your network to Azure and have access to this managed service. We will see that, after some time, Microsoft made some changes in that matter. But definitely, the big, the big thing of this managed instance is that you can easily take a backup of your databases and restore it in managed instance, in a matter of minutes. Just change the connection string of your application and you are running on a managed service without worrying about any infrastructure topic like all the ones we mentioned. Okay, so at the beginning, we said we will focus on our business, right? So we don't have to worry about purchasing hardware and doing the management, right? We don't have to worry about all the policies related to backups and data retention, right? Because again, it's built in the service. We don't have to set up costly, high availability and disaster recovery solutions. Like, for example, you have to have another data center in a different state or in a different country to be able to have a synchronous or asynchronous replica of your SQL database. Within this, you can easily define geo replication between different Azure regions, right? So monitoring and scalability. This is something really important because today, let's say that you have your hardware, right, your SQL Server, and you have certain amount of CPU, RAM, and disk, right? And for some reason, you come up with a new development that required an application that is CPU and I/O intensive, right? Well, maybe your existing server is not the best fit for that particular application because it's going to require more resources. And if you, let's say, put your application on that particular server, you may, not only have bad performance in your new project, but also you can affect the performance of your existing project or databases, right? How you can solve that? Eventually buy more memory, buy more CPU, etc., etc. In Azure, it's a little bit different because you can dynamically adjust the resources of your managed instance, right? You can assign more CPU and more disk space, right? With a slider, right? So simple. So we're gonna cover it later in the demo. So we said close to 100% compatibility with the SQL Server, right? So if we need to do any kind of data migration from our existing on-prem to managed instance, we can do native backup restore, right? Or we can even set up log shipping to do a migration more kind of in online, right? If we don't, if we are not allowed to, let's say, have a downtime, right, for the backup restore, we can even set up log shipping and do the cut at some point and leave the one in managed instance like the new primary. But again, log shipping is available in SQL Server since many years ago. In terms of programmatically, you don't have to modify any of your SQL code, right? Because everything is the same, right? So if you work with temporary objects, temporary tables in 10db, you got it. If you have to do cross-database queries, as I mentioned earlier, like one of the constraints of Azure SQL Database, right? You can even do it, right? You can even set up link server to another SQL environment, so you can do cross-server database using link server, right? And you can also consider using CLR. If you have to use a special CLR for your development and managed instance, you can use it as well. In terms of security, everything is exactly the same. All the features related to security like audit, TDE, row-level security, and always encrypted are present in managed instance, right? For us, for the DBA, for the operational point of view, right? All the dynamic management objects are available in managed instance, same as extended events, right? If we need to set up query store, it's also available. The SQL Server agent, something quite important that for example, SQL Server agent allow you to schedule different tasks related to SQL Server. In Azure SQL DB, for example, you don't have SQL Server agent, right? You have to use another Azure services in order to schedule this kind of programmatic task, right? In managed instance, it's same as you have in your SQL Server, right? You just create the SQL shop, you define an operator, you can send emails using database mail, same as on-prem, right? So you will notice that the environment is quite familiar to what we are used to, right? And then we have other scenarios like, service broker, change data capture, and even transactional replication is available in managed instance. And one important thing, if you see at the bottom of the slide, it supports compatibility mode starting in SQL Server 2005. That means that if you're running something in compatibility level 90 or 100, hopefully nobody's using 2005 or 2008 these days. But if you do, right, you can leave the compatibility level for the databases and move them to managed instance, right? And you will be, the service is able to handle that, right? Hopefully, sooner than later, you can change the compatibility level to something more modern, right? But definitely, if you have the situation in which you need to move a very old system running in an old SQL Server version, you have the choice. Okay, then when we get into managed instance, we will see that there are two kind of choices that we have. And this is what Microsoft called tiers. There are two tiers, general purpose or business critical, right? We will cover the differences a little bit later, but they are quite similar except for the storage, right? And how it handles the high availability, right? Definitely the difference are also in terms of pricing. The business critical is 2.5 times more expensive than general purpose, right? But again, the good thing is that you can switch from general purpose to business critical at any point, right? With a simple action in the portal, right? So just to give you some of the differences between one tier and the other, right? Is basically the type of processors that it uses, the supported memory. The SLA is the same for both of them, 4 nines, right? The amount of storage, right? If you check, one of the biggest differences here is the I/O latency and the IOPS, right? The maximum IOP. You see that in general purpose, you have a latency of 5 to 10 milliseconds, while in business critical, you have up to 2 milliseconds, right? And you need to scale, and if you have to scale over 30K IOPS, right? You have to do it with business critical, right? But again, it's simple to move from one to the other. So going a little bit back to how we do the migration, right? Let's say that for any reason we say, okay, we would like to go to Azure SQL Database, right? I will migrate my existing on-prem databases project to an Azure SQL Database, not managed instance. There are several services and applications from Microsoft, right, Data Migration Assistant, for example, which is a free application that you can download. And basically what it does, it's allow you to, select your source and select your destination. And when I say destination, it could be a SQL Server in Azure running, a SQL Server VM, a SQL Server database, Azure SQL DB, or Azure SQL DB managed instance. And depending on which destination you choose, it's going to do a different assessment, right? When I say assessment, basically, it will tell you what you have, and it will tell you what you need to do in order to successfully migrate your database project to an Azure SQL DB in this case, right? So you have to run this database migration assistant multiple times, getting the reports, and the reports will tell you exactly what you have to do and will guide you on how to fix those things. And after you go and do the refactoring of your code or your data model, etc., right? You run the assessment again up to you get let's say the green light saying, okay, now your database is ready to be migrated to Azure SQL DB, right? And how do you do that? You cannot do it with a backup restore, right? You have to, this DMA, Database Migration Assistant, what it does is create a backpack which basically deploy all the data model, and then it sends all the data asynchronously, right? It works well, but again, it's required a ton of refactoring of your code. These are the migration tools and services available, right? This Database Migration Assistant, you can go to the Microsoft site and download it. And what you will notice is that Microsoft updates it quite often, right, with the new rules, right? So definitely a good tool to have in your workstation. And if you want to do the same with an Azure service, right, there is Azure Database Migration Service, which is kind of similar, right? Instead, if you choose the option of going to a managed instance, you can have two options. If you can handle, let's say, a downtime, right, you can do offline with the possibility of doing a backup restore, right? And if you want to do it online, this database migration service, right, allow you to kind of have the migration online, right, with near zero downtime, right? You can also set up SQL replication or log shipping. So if you choose to do a backup, right, these are the steps. You just take the backup, right? Since SQL Server 2012, you can do a backup directly to a blob storage, to an URL, right? Or you can have your back file and move it with another tool, with a tool like Azure Storage Explorer to an storage account. And then from the managed instance, you just do the restore. Instead, if you want to use this service like a managed restore, you can use it as well. But the end result is that you can simply move your database from on-prem to Azure Managed Instance. Okay, so we were talking about SQL Server as a managed service. We know that when we get the SQL Server media to install in our server, we don't have only the SQL Server engine. There are other components as well, like analysis services, integration services, and reporting services, right? Managed instance is the SQL engine only, right? So the database server is only managed instance. For these other services, there are options that we will be covering right now, right? You can easily, let's say, deploy a virtual machine and install any of the services, right? Or you can do some of these options. For example, let's say for analysis services, right? For the one that are using analysis services. Analysis services, you have two choices, right? When you do the setup, you can choose between multidimensional or tabular model, right? There is a service called Azure Analysis Services, which is basically managed analysis services, right? Again, similar to what managed instance is for SQL Server, Azure Analysis Services is for the on-prem version of analysis services, right? You have an endpoint in Azure just to deploy your analysis services cubes and model using your favorite tool, Visual Studio or any other tool, right? And this service is in the market for many years, right? And it's quite mature and quite used, right? So definitely, if you have your tabular cubes, right, it's a good option to move to Azure Analysis Services. I just mentioned tabular, right? If you are using multidimensional, right, which is kind of a legacy model by now, but there are still some multidimensional projects. Let me change my headset. It's working well again.
Teams here. Do you hear me well now? Yeah, a lot of noise, so it was impossible to continue. So, okay. Okay, good. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with the headset. So let's go back to the presentation here. Okay, so I was saying then that if we have a tabular model on-prem, it's quite easy to move to Azure Analysis Services. We can either deploy the XMLA script, right? Or we can do a backup restore. If we have multidimensional, right, as I was saying, we cannot use Azure Analysis Services. The only option we have is to spin up a virtual machine and install analysis services, right, and set it up as a multidimensional model. But definitely it's something to consider, right? Azure Analysis Services. Instead, if you are using SSIS, right? There are certain combinations that you do for when you use analysis services with SSIS. So, for example, set up a warehouse or something like that, right? That you use integration services. The option is an Azure service called Azure Data Factory, right? Which allow you to easily schedule your ETLs, right? And set up your pipelines to transfer data and do any kind of data movement and transformation, right? And there are several components within Azure Data Factory that allow you to migrate your existing SSIS packages to Data Factory. So definitely Azure Data Factory is the counterpart of SSIS in Azure. Or again, you can set up a VM and install integration services. Right? And for reporting services, right, the best option and the one that Microsoft is recommending is move it to Power BI. Right? There are certain migration paths to move your SSRS reports to Power BI, or again, the option to set up a VM and install reporting services. So then, why we should move to managed instance? Basically, because the path from on-prem to managed instance is quite easy to take. All the problems that we may have, right, with for example, with Azure SQL DB, we won't see them with managed instance, right? All the features, right, or almost all the features that we have, right, in on-prem are available in managed instance, right? And it's a PaaS service. Of course, when we do such a migration, right, from a SQL Server that we are used to run on-prem for years, and we are now running it in a managed service in the cloud, this migration process required several steps and may involve different components or factors, right? For example, one of the things, it could be the rehost or refactoring, right? Which basically we won't need to do much, right, in order to migrate what we have on the source to the destination. Maybe some component that we will cover in a minute, right? But then, there are other paths which is a little bit more complex, which is the re-architect and even rebuilding the whole application, right? So, if we are just considering rehost, which is what is called lift and shift, right? It's simple. Managed instance is one of the best solution, right? For refactoring, right? For example, we need to do certain refactoring for whatever is related to authentication, right? You won't have your local Active Directory, right, in Azure. So you have to start using Azure Analysis Services, and this is something that you have to adapt, right? Definitely not too complex, but yeah, it's something that you have to take care of. One of the other things that it could be something to refactor is that, for example, managed instance doesn't support databases in any other model than full recovery model, right? So 100% of the databases that you host in managed instance have to be configured in full recovery model. And this is because how we handle the high availability and disaster recovery, right? Without you doing anything, but the request is, okay, so we will take care of your HADR, right? But the databases must be in full recovery model, right? Because internally, managed instance are 3 different instances, right? Which get replicated synchronously one to each other, right? For you, it's just one endpoint, right? One instance, right? But in the back end, there are 3 instances synchronizing constantly. So there are, many things that we definitely need to do. But one thing that is my recommendation every time that I speak with someone is we need to plan the migration. We need to do a proof of concept, right? And eventually, and ideally, actually, do a stress test, right? How our application will behave with certain load, with certain amount of users, right, on the new environment, right? So definitely, we should have a migration plan in place, and we need to test it, right, and have everything documented. So this is something that I mentioned earlier, right? On that, initially there was no connectivity between managed instance and the outside, meaning internet, right? So the only way to connect was through VPN or express route, or with your application, right? Connecting internally, but then publishing your, for example, web server to internet with no problem. So these are some of the features that are obsolete or not, we don't require it because it's a native service in the cloud, right? Always on availability group, every single flavor of backup restore, right? Windows authentication, etc. So features that are completely retired now are database mirroring and extended store procedure, right? So now we have to switch to CLR, right? And at the beginning, when I mentioned near 100% compatible, right, is because these features are not available. For example, if your deployment on-premise use file stream or file table, you cannot use managed instance, right? You have to do rebuild your application. I mean, if you're using those features, there are certain migration paths on how to, convert file stream file table to something cloud native, right? But definitely those features, as we know them, they are not available in managed instance. Then we will go through the demo in a minute, and we will see that this is not SQL Server 2016 or 2019 running in Azure, right? This is Azure SQL, right? So if we connect with Management Studio and we do, for example, select add version, we will see that the version is Microsoft SQL Azure, right? It's not SQL Server 2019. These are the latest features that I will cover then later with the demo, but definitely the ones that I would like to cover is that at the beginning, right, as I said, it was a private service, meaning no access to the internet. But then, after the community and the professional community was requiring to give us the possibility to access a managed instance through internet, they allow this possibility, right, as an optional set, right? We will see it later. Initially, in the first version, managed instance was only configured to run in UTC, right? You cannot, back then you were not able to change the time zone. But now when you do the deployment, you can, right? Same for trace flag. Now you have several global trace flag that you can use in managed instance. So let's jump to my scenario and let's see how we can do things with managed instance. So first of all, let's go to my Azure portal. Let me open a browser here. Here. I will open a browser and I will go to my portal, right? Portal.azure.com. Then I will go to the portal, log in with my account. So I'm already logged in, and I will go to Azure SQL here at the top. And when we go with Azure SQL, we will see that here we have a managed instance, right? This one is already deployed, but we will see how to deploy a new one. What's going on? Okay. Let's see if it gets connected quickly. This is, by the way, a virtual machine running in Azure, right? So I may have problems with the connectivity, but no, it's coming back.
Javier,
yes. What do you mean replication? Okay. Yeah. It's something that is brand new, actually, but you can configure Azure SQL Managed Instance, you configure a database and use transactional replication, right? As you cannot, let's say, use it as a publisher or distributor, right? But you can do transactional replication and subscribe to the replication, a transactional replication from a managed instance. So I will show you how to create a new managed instance, right, through the portal. So we just choose, it's quite slow, not sure why. Let me see if I can do something to make it faster. Yeah, this one definitely is not working. I will connect directly from my computer here. So we'll need this later to do the, okay. So I'm moving here my browser. This is from my local machine. So again, I go to portal.azure.com. So Azure SQL, when I go to Azure SQL, I will say create a new service, fine. Interesting. Quite slow, but it's not the connectivity, it seems to be Azure. So while we wait for this, let me show you what are the differences that you may have. Well, those are some of the problems that you may have connecting to an USA Azure region from Argentina, right? Which is the main problem that we have down here, which is connectivity, right? But in this case, it's not the connectivity problem. It seems to be more like a general issue. Okay, if you see my management studio here, right, which I always recommend to use the latest and greatest, you will see that I have down here, this long path, right? That is, oh, come on. It was running very well this afternoon when I tested the demo. You heard me well, Adriano? Is the audio quality good? Just closing my camera just in case, but as I said, I don't believe this is here. This is more. Over. Okay, here we are, at least here. So we will set up a new managed system. We'll see that it's quite easy. So we hit create. Then we have to choose as usual for every single Azure resource, the subscription that we're using and our resource group, right? I will choose one that I have. Then we have to specify one instance name. I will call it SQL MI Javier. The name is available. Then we have to specify an Azure region, right? In my case, we always choose East US, right? And here is where we configure the what we call tier, right? If it is either general purpose or business critical. Let me make it bigger. Consider that the numbers that you are seeing down there are not US dollar, are Argentinian pesos, right? So don't freak out, right? It's a big difference in terms of the number. But yeah, definitely it's not a cheap service. So here is where you select either general purpose or business critical. So let's start with the general purpose. Down here, we choose the amount of virtual cores that we're going to set up for our managed instance and the amount of storage, right? Then, we have the possibility, if we have a contract with Microsoft, right? We can move our license, our SQL Server license that we have for on-prem to use it with this managed instance, and we save a ton of money, actually, right? So then we have to specify a login, right? So we will set up a login, say admin, for example. Have to repeat it. And then we move on, right? So then we don't have many other things to check, or not many actually, right? We have to define like everything a virtual network, right? Then the connectivity type, which is the default, and then look down here, right? Is this public endpoint data, right? Which by default is disabled. If we enable, right, this visibility through internet, right? So, but by default, you saw it was disabled. So you can only access this through BPM or express route. So let's leave it enable. Then here's something important that was not available at the beginning, right? You can specify the collation, right? Initially, you were not able to, right? So you have to live with the default. But now you can specify all the collation that, the one that your application used. Same for the time zone. Initially, it was not available, and now you can choose, let's say, Buenos Aires, right? We move on. And down here is ready. It will tell you how much it's going to cost, plus minus, give you all the summary, but don't the message that you have here at the top. Deploying a managed instance is a long-running operation that can take up to 6 hours. When I was working on the private previews, these 6 hours actually were 48 hours, right? So, yeah. Is I see it like spinning. Yeah. Is the OBS that is okay? Okay, so let me. Can I continue? Okay. Oh, let's open. Let's move the browser. So yeah, I was saying here, when you are ready to start the deployment, you get this message saying that it's a long-running operation that can take up to 6 hours, right? So we won't create it here now because it's going to take up to 6 hours. So we have one already deployed, right? And here you have all the monitoring tools and port and solution to do, for example, set up the connectivity with the Azure Active Directory. You can set up advanced data security, which is basically something that checks underneath if there is any unusual activity related to security, and it's provide you with extensive report. You can set up TDE, transparent data encryption, right? Set up your alerting. Here you have your metrics, etc., etc., etc. Right? So we can even see from here the usage in terms of CPU, database usage, etc., etc. And here we have the connection string, how we can connect to the managed instance. Right? This is the connection string if we use it internally, right, through Azure, right? And we go to this URL using the port 1433 as we normally do from any other SQL Server. If we enable the endpoint to be public, to go through internet, we will have a second connection string which will be similar to this one with different few differences, but the port is not going to be the default. It's not going to be 1433. We will check it later. So here we have everything from the portal, so it is already created. So now if I go to my management studio and I want to get connected, right? We will see here. Here I'm connected to a VM running on my machine, and then I'm connected to the managed instance, right? Note that here I'm connecting to the public endpoint, so the connection string is a bit different, right? And the port is not 1433, is 3342, right? So I will show you how to connect. Here you go to connect to server, and well, definitely it's not. It's not behaving. It's gonna be disconnected again. But as you can see, the connectivity endpoint, if you realize, the icon was a little bit different than the normal SQL Server was, the database with the cloud. But then you had everything. You have all your user databases. You have your SQL Server agent, etc., etc., etc. And to do the migration, I won't be able to do it because the connectivity is terrible. But it's as simple as doing a backup to an URL, to leave your backup file in a blob storage, and then just do a simple restore, right? With that, you have your databases from on-prem to the cloud in a matter of minutes, and the only thing you have to do in order to complete the process is just change the connection string of your application. So yeah, unfortunately it's not moving. So I will open the presentation for questions if you have.
Give it a second.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's weird because it seems like it's a general problem with Azure, not from my network, because one of the VM was in United States and the other one was directly from my computer here. So Open Management Studio. Yeah, the questions are coming a little bit late in YouTube, but yeah, definitely. One of the questions I see is the replication. This is something that wasn't available at the very beginning, neither log shipping, right? But now, as I said, if you have a SQL Server on-prem, which is publishing a publication through a distributor, right? Then you can subscribe to that publication with absolutely no problem, right? From your on-prem server. So let me see if I can show you. Let's see if I have a workaround here. At least to show you something else. So here, this is Management Studio. This is the public endpoint. So when we connect through Management Studio, we have to specify the whole connection string, including public, right? And we have to specify the port 3342, right? This is because it's not internal. And then, SQL authentication and the account that we create in the portal when we were spinning up the service. Then we just connect, right? And as I was saying before, notice that the icon here is a little bit different than a normal or a regular SQL Server. But then in terms of services, we have SQL Server Agent, we have all the databases, we have the replication, absolutely everything same as on-prem. Yeah, this should be spinning up more quickly because I have like 3-4 databases deployed, and well, as I said, not sure what's wrong with the connectivity, but yeah, the idea was basically to take a backup of an on-premise database which has an application pointing to it, and then do the backup restore and change the connection string of the application, and you will see that it's exactly the same. Unfortunately, we won't be able you won't be able to see it, but yes, that was the idea. Again, with that, I leave this open for questions. I can point it to a recording of the demo if you want. But definitely, this is one of the services that I like the most. Definitely, when Azure SQL DB was there, I was using it for certain types of projects, but I had the necessity to do the lift and shift, right? When quickly migrate to a managed service, and definitely managed instance was the solution. It's not heaven. Of course, there are different things to tune and consider when you are when you deploy your project in a cloud environment, right? There are many considerations, like for example connectivity, as you just see from here. In Argentina, as I said earlier, and all South America, the closest Azure region that we have is in East US, right? So that's the complicated part. Normally we don't have issues, but well, seems that today was not the day. So again, I'm opening for questions. Okay, here we finally spin up the databases, but yeah, it's not moving quickly enough.
I see.
Okay, you have my connectivity. I mean, my social network, LinkedIn and Twitter. So if you want to reach me, as I said, I'm constantly publishing stuff through them. So thank you for attending to the presentation. Sorry for the technical inconvenience, but this is it. Thanks, everyone.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Javier, for taking the time being available here to present to the user group point two of folks. Today we talked about
Yeah, correct. Um, it's going to be a session related to monitoring SQL Server environment, right? Using community tools, which turns out to be free, right? So it's a very good solution, right? Which has a lot of backup and background from the different community experts, and most of them I use them in production today as we speak. So definitely it's a good it's a good session.
so, folks. Stay tuned. Do not miss that. Just one more thing here to say is remember we have the SQL Pass this year. The summit will be virtual, November 10th to the 13th, 2020. Registration is open, and being part of a Pass user group will get you some discounts. Don't miss that. So, also, second thing is if you're a speaker and would like to do a presentation at the summit, or better said, be considered to present at SQL Pass Summit on November 10th through the 13th. The call to speakers open, I believe, until the 17th or thereabout, which is in a week, by the way. So again, go to SQL pass.org to register there. How about you, Javier? Anything else there? What's new coming with SQL Argentina?
Sorry. So no, about SQL Argentina, we run a local meetup here. You can find it as SQL Argentina. It's part of the PAS community. We have presentations and different speaker every couple of weeks. It's in Spanish. And then we have another show for the LATAM community called Azure at the Bar, in where we have different community experts from Latin America discussing about technology, cloud, solutions, Azure, and it's at the bar, so we share a beer and we discuss very relaxed about technology between friends. So it's a nice show. As for today, we are running it in Spanish. Soon we're gonna have subtitles, and we will have some good people from Microsoft Corp working. I mean, on one of our sessions soon. So stay tuned. So we are after a big fish, as we call him. So yeah, that's Azure at the bar, Azure en el bar actually. So that's it.
All right. Once again, thank you very much, Javier. Thank you very much, everybody attending there. Have a great day, and remember, please do like, share, and comment on the presentation.
Audio.
Really appreciate. Be well there, everybody, and take care.
All right.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Javier. I